Hey guys, how's it going today? As promised, I am doing my trade review for the week. I've had a lot of questions actually about the trades that I've been posting and some of the videos that I've been sharing as well, and I want to answer some of those questions today. Um, and so a few things I will go through is I'm going to talk about the short trade that I took today. I did short the NQ. I didn't really get to post on IG about it much today because it's been quite a hectic Friday for me. But I'll talk a little bit about that, where my entry was, why I took it, and all that, going over a little bit about my journey so far with Top Step, as I've been trading with them for about 3 weeks now. So I want to talk about that. And then I'm going to go over my Tradeify payout that I just posted about as well today. And then I'm going to go over some of my trader stats pertaining to those accounts. And speaking to these specifics, because there's been a lot of questions about why I favor the Asia session and what do I look for and how does it differ from the New York session. So I'll try to touch on that as much as I can today without going on for too long, because I don't want the video to be too long for you guys to go over here. But so I'm just gonna go straight into it. As you can kind of see here, what I'm sharing here is that this is the Top Step account that I've been using. And with this account, this is one of my older accounts, which I know obviously is not a very long time at that. But as you can see here, I have about 13 trading days with it up to this point. So if you guys remember, I posted about my 10K day, which was, I think it was 2 Fridays ago. It was done with this account. And so hence why like the highest balance I've ever had was 13, which was because of a bit in due part of that 10K day that I had. I've had two payouts on this account so far. Now I haven't posted about the second payout because, as mentioned, I usually don't share until it's actually in the bank account. I know I can request it and all that stuff, but it's just a discipline thing for me. I don't consider it a gain until it's realized gains. So we'll likely share that sometime next week when it finally reflects in the bank account. But basically, with this specific account, it's done well for me so far. I've kept it alive so far. I know some people, when they talk to me about how, like, when they pass through evals and they get to the funded and then they blow their funded right away. It really is about the discipline and all of that. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit as well when I talk about the Tradeify accounts. But jumping straight into the NQ short. So today the market melted off. I think it moved probably about 500 points to the downside on the NQ today. And so I didn't really follow up on the news or anything like that may have caused it. So I'm really just going to talk about the technical aspect of it. As you can kind of see here at 6:44 this morning, I was targeting shorts to the downside. And I mean, it was moving fairly quick. Now, I didn't catch the initial drop. Notice I mentioned this 15 minutes into the market open. I know there are some people who may have caught it sooner, and kudos to you guys for sure. For me, when I take my trades, I talk a lot about the fact that I'm always looking at what I'm willing to risk versus what I'm willing to make. And so I had to look for the right entry for that. And so I took my entry based off of the lower high. And so now I'm going to close this part out and I'm going to show you a bigger screenshot of this so you guys can see. Um, my entry was here. I took the entry of the short on the NQ at 22,158.75. Why did I take it at this part? Well, as you can see, after the market opened and we moved down, I waited for a lower high entry, and that's essentially what made me take it. Now, I'm going to dive into this a little bit further, more than just that. So now that I've shown you that, let's go right into the charts. So as you saw where my entry was basically right over here, as I'm highlighting over with my mouse here. If you look at the prior day as well, we did like pull down quite a bit on Thursday, right? And so this channel that I've drawn here, I've had this channel drawn for a couple weeks now, and there's been a lot of good action, whether it's consolidating within it, bouncing off of it, or rejecting off of it. And so coming into the Friday, obviously it was OPEX Friday, and we had to really trade carefully, and we don't want to oversize too much. And to be perfectly honest, when I trade the New York session, I don't size too much. Like two contracts can do quite a bit of damage already, right? And so depending on my risk tolerance, I'm not going to go for too much. And so with the account that I actually traded today with the NQ, I did not use any of the accounts that were ready for payouts. I used one that was fairly fresh in its trading day period. So I knew I still have quite a few days left. And the reason why is I've been talking about this a lot. You hear all the stories all the time about people how when they're so close to a payout and then they blow their account the day before the payout. If you know that that is a tilt matter for you, do everything in your power to avoid that, right? And so for me, the account that I requested for a payout today on Friday, I only got my $200 minimum today, and I left it at that. I took that over the Asia session, right? So coming into New York, I used a different account for this. But as I mentioned, this channel was important to me. So as it was coming down, generally when I trade the New York session, I'm looking to risk 30 points on a contract, right? And so I had to look for an entry where 30 points of risk made sense to me. And so as we started coming up here for the lower high entry, the reason why this entry made sense to me was because if it was 30 points up, it was still within beneath the white line here. And for me, that was my risk. Because if it would have breached above that, then I would have had to think about pivoting to longs potentially, right? And so I had to make sure that that made sense. Because arguably you could be like, oh, Alan, why didn't you just take your entry down here? Personally, for me, that risk doesn't make sense because if it were to pull up, which it did, from this point on, that was what, 139 to 170 almost, right? Like that is just a little bit. Well, I guess I should include the wick. That would have been more than that. Would build up 180 almost. That would have been about a 40-point risk. So that's well past my risk ratio, right? And so, and technically speaking, I would have expected to be able to come back up here potentially, right? So it would have been way more than 40 points. So risk alone, it would have made no sense for me to take the trade there. Secondly, that was also the Asia opening print. So I always mark when the Asia opens and when the New York session opens. It's just something I do. I'm still trying to fine tune my reasoning, my whys, and all that, but it is something I do. But as you can see, it respected the Asia opening print. So I didn't take a short there because I needed to see how it was going to react to that area first. Once we got that leg in, I took my shorts and I rode it down and I caught the points that I needed on the trade today, as you kind of saw already there. So I'm not going to go into too much. I didn't catch this full mood move, and honestly, could I have? I mean, in hindsight, 2020, you could be like, oh man, you could have helped through this all. But for me, I wasn't looking for a massive, massive trade today. It is OPEX Friday. I have seen OPEX fuckery before. I was not about to get messed by that and go on tilt. So, you hear me talk about it all the time. What half of our battle is tilt prevention, right? So if I got my profit target, I'm happy. I'm moving on. You can sit here and FOMO about this, but any experienced trader will know that these move will come and go. You missed it today, not a big deal. Because guess what? We had a good move on Thursday. And if you go into the other days, the day that I made my 10K day on the Friday, that was another day, right? So there will be always other days. And so the mindset of abundance is important, right? Don't force trades. Don't try to rush things, right? I think it's important for you to know your plan in advance, right? So anyways, I just want to touch on that short trade. Now, something else that I also want to go over was actually the Tradeify accounts. So I want to start off with this one first, actually, with you guys. And I want to share this because this is one of my fresher Tradeify accounts, and I want to show you this right here. You can see that this day I took full daily loss on this account. Now there was an error made on my part, and I let emotions take over right afterwards, right? And so uh, prior to, I had my Tradeovate account set up because I had full ported an Apex eval the day prior, and I posted about that as well because I passed that eval in one day. But I still had it preset to 15 contracts, and I didn't notice that when I had entered my position this day. So when I did that, I obviously right out of the gates, it went against me. And because I had so many contracts in, I was already negative 1,300 right out of the gates. Emotions kicked in, and I told myself, oh man, I can't take that $1,300 loss right now. I'm going to hold it. What do I think? And just like everyone else thinks, oh, I'm hoping that it comes back in my favor. Well, unfortunately, the timing was not great, even though my trade thesis on that trade would have been a good one and it would have been within my 30-point risk parameter. However, I was sized way too high, so I hit my daily loss way too early. This is why sizing your positions is super important. But other than that, though, I think what's super proud about this is that like I was able to come back the next days and the next day and the next day, and I didn't let this get the best of me. The old me would have looked at this and be like, okay, the next day I need to make up my $3,800 that I lost. Instead, for me, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just play the chart and go after what I'm actually wanting. Forget trying to make that money back. That's not the point, right? And so by ensuring that I had the right mindset, I was able to rebuild back plus and more the money that I had lost. So now I'm still on my way to getting that payout in 5 days, 5 trading days from now. As long as I can keep my consistency here going, I'll be able to get it. And I think that in itself is something that's really, really worth highlighting because a lot of times when we make mistakes, it's so easy for us to, avalanche further and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be able to make it back or I'm going to hold it longer. It's so important to understand what are your tilt. indicators and do everything in your power to prevent yourself from falling into that trap. And so everyone has their own thing, and you just kind of have to figure that out. And if you have a mentor, obviously work with your mentors to figure out what that's going to be. But I think that's super, super important. So I want to highlight this account because that was like, even for myself, I've had such consistency these past 3 months here. Even I will make mistakes like this. Even though it started off as a clerical error, I still let the emotions take it over, right? And so, anyways, so that is that, right? The other account that I want to talk about next was my OG account. So this is the account that I've been talking about. So I posted about this recently. I just posted my payout today on this account. I've been trading this account for, I guess this is 44 now, but it was 43 days when I had requested it, right? So that's a big deal for me. It's not even about the money or the profits that's in the account. It's about the fact that I've been able to hold on to this account without blowing it for 43, 44 days. Like that's huge. That it for me is more of a reflection of also the consistency and the resilience over time to get to this stage, right? And so I got my payout and I took another trade today and I made my 500 bucks. And I'll tell you right now, you know what my strategy is going to be? I am just going to trade the minimum 250 every single day for the next 9 days to ensure that I could get my next payout. I am not shooting for the moon here, right? I think that it's so important that we understand that when we are trading prop firms, understand the rules of the prop firms that you're playing with and then know what your edge is and what your goal is with each of these accounts because I don't trade all the accounts the same. I trade them all differently. And I'm going to touch on that when I get to my trader stats in a bit. But I want to talk about that. The last account I want to talk about here, which this is the one that I will go through the trader stats with. This is another straight to funded account that I have with Tradeify. And so this is a fairly new one as well. And so with this account, you can see that for 5 straight days, I've had winning days, right? I haven't had a losing day on this account yet. And so, this consistency again is a reflection of my progress because, I obviously, as I mentioned before, I've gone through multiple Tradeify accounts, right? Because all through learning and what have you, figuring out the nuances of different accounts, different rules, figuring out what sessions made sense to me, right? There's so many factors that I won't go into too much detail today, but this is the account that I'm going to go into detail with the trader stats, and I'm going to talk about the Asia session and the New York session here. Okay. So let's close that up and go straight to the trader stats. So this is the account that I was referring to, 100% win rate, average trade time, 21 minutes. And so as I go through this, you can see the stats. There's not a lot to share here because of the fact that it's 100% win rate, there isn't much of an average loss or win thing to really pay attention to here, other than the fact that it's on a hot streak at this moment in time. Now, what I'm going to go in through here is the calendar, and I want to highlight. So with this account, I've actually traded gold quite a bit with this, and predominantly every trade that was done on this account was done over the Asia session. One thing I'd like to highlight as well before I touch on that topic is that one of the strategies that I have with prop firms is that generally what I'll do is with the account, I'll build up a buffer in the early stages of things just to have a little bit of wiggle room. And you'll notice that in every account stat that I have, I always start off really strong and I start to taper off. That is very intentional. That is intentional because once you have the buffer, your goal isn't to hit home runs every day. Your goal is to be able to make just what you need to ensure you can secure your payout because getting that payout is your main objective, right? And through that, over time, you can kind of continue to build on and build that, right? So you can see my first couple days here, 1.7K, 1.5K. And then from there on out, the remaining 3 days, I haven't hit over 1,000 once, all intentional. So I want to just kind of talk about, for example, on this day. Um, so I think did it say it was FOMC? Hold on, let's double check here. No. Okay. Anyways, so going into this, I can go straight here and take a look at what my trade was. So for this trade, I traded gold. Yes, it was gold that I traded. So I traded gold to the upside. And for this one, I was trading the Asia session, but just kind of to the tail end, right? And I took longs on this trade. And so that was between 840 until about 9. I found that by the way, I've been trading gold because of my buddy Scott, because he's all about gold and he's given me his 2 pointers as well as, and I can't agree more with him. I mean, when you watch the Asia sessions, especially Asia opening or the London Open, there's some pretty clean action on gold to take. So if you haven't noticed that already, I would definitely take a look at that, right? But with this account, I've kind of gone after like a higher size, but a scalp mentality. So I'm usually in a trade for 10 to 15 minutes and I'm out basically over the Asia session. If you watch some of my other videos, I've talked about the fact that when it comes to the Asia session, on average, your overall move and range is not going to be as big as the New York. It's almost a fourth or a fifth of the size. And so when you're looking for those big, big moves during the Asia session, it's just not likely. Right. And so that's the reason why I'm generally just looking for 15 points. Now, obviously, with that, over my comfort zone and time, I've kind of start to gain a better understanding of how the Asia market moves. I have a little bit more comfortability to take the setups that I want. So I size up a little bit higher that I do in Asia versus the New York. So I mentioned earlier with the New York session, I only trade one to two, maybe three contracts, but that's like three contracts is probably A plus and like, all the stars are aligning and you're taking the risks there, right? But generally just one to two contracts. On the Asia session, though, I'm very comfortable taking two to three just on an average setup, right? Or maybe I shouldn't say average setup, but I'm more comfortable taking them more frequently. And I'd be willing to size as high as five contracts over the Asia session if I'm going for 10 to 15 point scalps, which is essentially what I did for most of this specific account, right? And so there's that. I will show you the other one as well. These were all over the Asia session. So same thing with this one. This one was traded on the NQ, long entry. And again, you can see here, I took it at about 4:15-ish, give or take. So about 1 hour after the market had opened. Did the same thing there. And then what is the next one here? Same thing, 500. Would I trade this? Would I traded gold? And what time did I do it at? Again, 4 o'clock, basically 1 hour after the Asia Open. I'm sorry, I'm sure now you're starting to see a trend here. And then the last trade here, what did I do here? I was trading gold again. And then same thing. This move obviously wasn't as clean off the gates, right? But again, I got in, it consolidated, but I still got the long that I was looking for. Now, as I'm talking about all this through the trader stats, I'm reviewing it, I'm taking notes, and I'm looking at it. As soon as I see a trend going on the Asia session, I will take advantage of it and I will scalp lower highs, lower lows, higher highs, right? Depending on what the setup obviously looks like, right? But my accounts, like my fund of futures, was obviously I'm waiting to be moved live now, so I don't have those anymore. But and Tradeify, those are the accounts that I generally scalp with. And the reason why I do that is because I've built a buffer in those accounts already that I don't need to go for home runs anymore. As long as I can make the minimums, maybe it's 250, 300, 400, that's all I need in order to get my payouts. So the strategy already is built into my trade plan is that I'm going in with a scalp mentality with these accounts. I'm not looking for home runs. So no matter what, that is what I stick to. I don't care what the market presents. I don't care if it presents me a 100-point move. I'm not looking for that with these accounts, right? If I see an opportunity to take 100-point moves, fantastic. Maybe I'll with all my accounts that I'm using to scalp, I'll just keep scalping it until I'll take the 100 points in different ways, right? I'll take chunks and chunks of it at a time, but I'll not use one account to hold out the whole thing. Again, it really depends on what your objective is, what your style is, right? I don't think there's one silver bullet way to trading. I'm just letting you know that if you wanted to know how I've been getting my consistent payouts with all my accounts, I've been very strategic and very intentional about how I've been trading my accounts, right? And with the New York session, generally you're going to get a lot of bigger moves there, right? So in the past, when I had my funded futures family accounts, which again, I've capped out with them already, so I'm waiting to be moved live with them as well. With them, I had all the flexibility because there was very little rules with those accounts, right? Which is why I loved the prop so much, right? And so I was able to max out my cap probably the fastest I've ever been able to do with any prop firm because I maxed out my payout within 3 weeks trading with them, right? And so I mainly traded the New York session when I was trading with them because there was larger moves and I had the ability to do that with those accounts, right? So same thing now when I'm trading with Top Step, I'm generally trading the New York session with Top Step, right? Now, if I'm only going in for the base hits of getting my $200 minimums, I'll just scalp the Asia session. So usually with the accounts with Top Step where I'm like, okay, I'm only a day away from getting a payout, then I'll probably just scalp in the Asia. But if I have an account that had already gotten a payout and I'm starting my fresh 5-day cycle, I'm more willing to take a little bit more risk and then trade the New York session to see if I can build that buffer again for that next payout, right? I can't, I'm not going to go into too much more of the detail because honestly, I could probably talk on this topic forever, but I do hope that adds a little bit of insight and value to how I take the different prop firm accounts, why I do what I do, what sessions I trade, why they're important to me. I can go on for hours about this topic, but I hopefully that adds a little bit of value. And again, hopefully I answered some of the questions from the comments from the other videos that I posted and from people who've been reaching out to me on Instagram or Discord. Um, but yeah, if there's any other questions or any comments, just drop them below. A like on the video would mean a lot to me as it helps the algorithm as I'm building out my journey as a day trader and trying to share this journey on YouTube as well. And if you haven't already, subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. Anyways, until next time, see you guys later.